Hey everybody, what's going on? Dustin here. Welcome back to another Histobrick build. I know some of you guys actually did like the Carl D. Bradley video the last time I did it, so this time I'm back with another one, and this time we're going to be building the SS Andrea Doria, the Italian liner that sank on July 25th of 1956. With only less casualties than Titanic, so that's surprising. So, how the collision happened? Well, it happened in the fog. There were two ships that were run parallel with each other. However, the ship that was involved, the Stockholm, collided with the Andrea Doria, thus damaging one of the ballast tanks and causing the Andrea Doria to kind of list starboard, and basically it didn't submerge until like about hours later, like into the early morning hours. And the rescue there was actually by far one of the most unbelievable ones ever. Even though that most of the casualties came from the collision, almost everyone got off the ship safely, and the ship would eventually roll over and go under. So, yeah, so I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm actually going to go ahead and take this off. So, yeah, this is what the model itself looked like. And of course, here's the back as well. And if you notice how the background lighting is a little bit different, I actually do happen to have a strip light just running around my bedroom, and I'm gonna have to do some work on it as well. So it'll be a while. So hopefully I fix up that issue. So yeah. So anyway, yeah, just sit back and enjoy me building the Andrea Doria. So I'll check back with you afterwards. Alright, so I'm back at the infamous build table. Now, I'm going to show you the contents inside first before I build away on it. So, you get this nice SS Andrea Doria sleeve. I showed it in the Carl D. Bradley one, but first you actually get this nice little note right here saying that Histobrick, thank you for your contribution and their support. And of course, if you have any questions whatsoever, here's the contact info. And of course, I got my trusty brick separator. I don't use teeth or knives. Just ask Tom Linsky. And put that off to the side. Comes in this nice bamboo box. Got clear bags. We got one for the prints and the shafts. We got one for the blacks and the whites. No. And we also got one for the anti-fowling and, of course, the interior and the decking. And we get this nice Histobrick instruction booklet, which is designed by Tom Warbert himself. And, of course, you have the history of the Andrea Doria. And there are... Yeah, and there are 250 steps in this. Not bad compared to the Carl D. Bradley. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get to work.
Hello all, welcome back to another Histobrick time-lapse build. My name is Dustin and I will be providing commentary. Now, this model I'm currently building is the SS Andrea Doria, which is a luxury transatlantic ocean liner of the Italian line that was put in service in 1953. But however, the ship is well known for the extensive media coverage of her sinking in 1956. And there we go, I had to adjust the tripod down so that way you can see me build. But however, and what was I saying? Oh yeah, this basically included the successful rescue of 1,660 out of her 1,706 passengers and crew. However, the Andrea Doria, or yard number 918, was named after the 16th century Genoese admiral Andrea Doria. The ship had a gross registered tonnage of 29,100 and a capacity of about 1,200 passengers and 500 crew, which is not bad whatsoever. Of all the Italy's ships at the time, the Andrea Doria was actually the largest, fastest, and supposedly the safest. Launched on the 16th of June 1951, she was actually homeported in Genoa, and she actually began her maiden voyage on the 14th of January of 1953. However, we'll get to her sinking in a bit. So, there we go. The anti-fowling part right here, this one's actually not that bad. Now, there was actually some things that did confuse me. If you see these orange bricks, basically, there's a tan color, not like the bright one for the deck, which is basically the wood. And it showed up orange on the instruction book. I was like, wait a minute. What is this? What is this? Alright, anyway, let me go back to what I was saying. So the Andrea Doria was basically is the flagship of her own kind, with a length of 213.80 meters, or 701 feet and 5 inches, with a beam of 90 feet and 3 inches, draft of 30 feet or 9.1 meters, 10 decks, and the installed power train on there is a steam turbines, which propels the twin propellers with a max speed of 23 knots. And like I said, it can carry up to 1,241 passengers and has a crew of 560. The ship is actually designed by a famous Italian architect named Giulio Minoletti. Now, do keep in mind, some of the names are Italian, so basically I don't know Italian real well, nor I am fluent. So if I butcher any names, I do apologize on my part. So, the Andrea Doria was neither the largest vessel nor the fastest of her day, so those distinctions went to the 83,673 gross registered tonnage of the RMS Queen Elizabeth and 42 knots, and also the SS United States. Instead, her forte was luxury. So, yeah, if you see me with that flashlight right there, basically I drop a missing part, so I use it just to pick it back up. Now, the Andrea Doria was built with a double hull divided into 11 watertight compartments, so any two could be filled with the water without endangering the ship's safety, and she was also equipped with the latest early warning radar system and carried 16 steel lifeboats. Not bad, compared to the Titanic's wooden lifeboats as well. And there were 8 on each side, which is enough by regulation to accommodate all passengers and crew. And you gotta keep in mind, the Andrea Doria disaster happened back in 1956, so basically we're 44 years outside of the RMS Titanic disaster. Despite these technological advances, it does have some flaws relating to seaworthiness and actually safety. Model testing actually did prove during the design phase predicted she would develop a huge list when hit by any significant force. This basically could be a rough wave. And this was actually proven during her maiden voyage when the vessel listed 28 degrees after being hit by a large rogue wave off Nantucket. Her tendency to list was aggravated when her fuel tanks were nearly empty, which was usually at the end of a voyage. At the end of the Second World War, Italy was actually struggling with a collapsed economy and lost half of its merchant fleet through wartime destruction and reparations awarded to various Allied forces. The losses includes the scuttling and the bombing of the Rex, which is a former blue ribbon holder for her record of transatlantic crossing, and to show the war that the country had to recover from war to reestablish the nation's pride, the Italian line commissioned 2 new vessels of similar designs in the early 1950s. So basically, the first one was the Andrea Doria, which was named after the 16th century Genoese admiral, and the second is the Cristoforo Colombo. I apologize if I butchered that name, after explorer Christopher Columbus. That junk drawer came in handy though. The Andrea Doria's original maiden voyage date was supposed to be on December 14th of 1952, but however, reports of machinery problems during sea trials arises. So the departure was delayed to January 14th of 1953. So following the Italian line's advertised route, she collected 794 passengers, which is basically 152 first class, 157 cabin class or second class, and 485 tourist class, which was originally third class, before heading into the Atlantic Ocean for New York. However, she encountered heavy storms on her final approach to New York, listing a full 28 degrees after being hit by a large rogue wave. So she arrived on the 23rd of January and received a welcoming delegation that included New York Mayor Vincent R. Impellitteri. And I apologize if I butcher his name as well, because that's the last name I am not familiar with. So, however, the anti-fouling part for this model is actually not that hard. It was actually pretty easy to build anyway. So, as you can see in the background, I decided I'm just gonna turn my laptop on and keep track of the time. It said 5:55 on the laptop, and yes, that is a picture of the RMS Titanic in the background. So I decided to check Discord, basically checking out the Historic Travels Discord server and the History Inside Nutshell servers. And of course, these are me adding on to the sides. So yeah, if you have not noticed in the background while loading, my notifications is actually going off. And there we go, up on Discord. And basically, okay, I'm going to decide to go to the Historic Travels Discord server and see what's going on. Flip another page and basically get to work on making the bow section of the anti-fouling. And it's going along good, so no really issues there. So that is basically one part of the ship done. And basically also adding some flat parts up on top basically for the hull itself. So this is where the update comes along.
Okay, got the anti-fouling part done. And the anti-fouling is actually a little bit different compared to the Olympic class ones I have done in the past. Now, the trickiest part was the coloring between these two. Not sure if you see it, because the instructions called for a orange 1x2, and if you saw what I put in there, called for these, because I really like to consolidate these if I need them. So I just, rumble through my little junk drawer and decided, okay, I'm going to grab two random colors, because they're going to be on the inside, so it really doesn't affect the build whatsoever. So I think now it's time to work on the top decks of the ship. So, and of course, as I was building this, I looked up and my light strip's fallen. Yep, and there it goes. To be fair though, one side's hanging on, so I swear, package can't get here fast enough.
So basically the package that I was talking about is I went to Amazon that morning and basically decided to buy some holders, which basically I had to screw them into the wall. So at the time this video is uploaded, that will already be done. So I'm actually going to talk about the Andrea Doria more. So as I'm building the top part, which is basically the black and the white superstructure part, so I'm actually going to talk about its 51st westbound and last voyage of the Andrea Doria. Her recent eastbound crossing from New York concluded on the 14th of July of 1956 after a 3-day turnaround, and was actually scheduled to be outbound from Genoa on Tuesday, July 17th. So this run, she was booked to roughly 90% of her total passenger capacity. So on the morning of the 17th of July, the Andrea Doria began to take on her first class passengers at 8 a.m. and a total of 277 embarked from there. 49 first class, 72 cabin class, and 156 tourist class. Now, keep in mind this. there are some very, very familiar names on here. So, one of them happened to include Hungarian ballet dancers Istvan Rabasovsky and Nora Kovac, who had defected from the Soviet bloc to the United States just 3 years earlier. So, keep in mind there is a Soviet and U.S. tension kind of going on. So, we're basically in the midst of a Cold War. And of course, as you see in the background, I am watching NASCAR, so I decided to have that on just for noise. So, the Andrea Doria arrived at Cannes on the French Riviera mid-afternoon on that same day, so basically 48 additional passengers boarded there. So basically you have 30 first class, 15 cabin, and 3 tourists. Now, there is a familiar name. For those that don't know, there's a Hollywood actress on board that would be one of Andrea Doria's most famous passengers, Ruth Roman, who was traveling with her 3-year-old son, Richard. The famous songwriter, Mike Stoller, was also on board as well. From Cannes, the Andrea Doria sailed 400 nautical miles southwest to Naples, arriving that following morning. Total of 744 came aboard there, so you got 85 in first class, 161 cabin, and 498 in tourists. The latter were immigrants from impoverished regions of southern Italy that is basically on their way to new lives in America. Kind of like Titanic situation. You got so many third class, basically a mixture of immigrants, Irish, and more. Basically want to go to America to start a new life. But however, some of those lives are actually cut short due to the sinking. So she departed just after 6 p.m. and arriving 2 days later off Gibraltar, and a total of 65 passengers boarded, so you got 26 first class, 19 cabin class, and 20 tourist class before she set out for New York. However, that fateful day, Wednesday, July 25th, just before noon, this familiar ship should ring a bell to you. The Stockholm of the Swedish-American line departed from New York Harbor on her 103rd eastbound crossing across the Atlantic. Today, she will be known as the Astoria. So she's heading back home to Gothenburg, Sweden. And she's basically roughly the half of the size of the Andrea Doria, and the Stockholm's actually the smallest passenger liner of the North Atlantic run during the 50s, and completed in 1948. So she was actually much more practical design than the Doria, originally built to accommodate only 395 passengers in 2 different classes. So the Stockholm was actually designed without the opulence of the Andrea Doria because the Swedish American line was aware that the rapid growth of air travel was soon bring an end to the age of transatlantic passenger travel. But they did not envision the massive surge in tourism fueled by the buoyant American economy that arose during the 50s. The Stockholm left New York booked to almost to capacity with 534 passengers and a crew of 208. She was actually commanded by Captain Harry Gunnar Nordenson, though third officer Jonan Ernst Karsteds Johansson was on duty on the bridge at the time of the accident. So this was basically his first time alone on the bridge of a ship, who has been up since 6 a.m. that morning, supervising baggage loading and passenger boarding in New York. However, when Stockholm was following her usual homeward course, which would take her south of the Nantucket Lightship, it was already foggy. This course was intended to save more time, but was nonetheless see the Stockholm 20 miles north of the recommended eastbound course for ships leaving the United States, putting it straight towards into westbound traffic. This is actually a clear violation of the 1953 North Atlantic Track Agreement, to which the Swedish-American line was a signatory, cruising under clear skies, making about 18 knots, and visibility Karstens Johansson estimated of 6 nautical miles. So, as the two ships approached each other in the failing light, a lot of things actually did happen. The Stockholm and the Andrea Doria were approaching each other head-on, heavily used shipping corridors. So the westbound Italian liner been traveling in a heavy bank for hours. The captain had to reduce speed slightly from 23.0 to 21.8 knots, and activated the fog's warning whistle. It had closed watertight compartment doors. This basically tells other ships in the area there's another ship in there. The eastbound Stockholm had yet to enter the bank's western edge and was seemingly unaware either of it or Andrea Doria's movements with it. However, the two ships approached each other in failing light in a combined speed of 40 knots. Each was aware of the presence of another ship only through radar, but however, they apparently misinterpreted each other's course and made no initial radio communication. The Stockholm collided with the Andrea Doria at almost a 90-degree angle. And you gotta remember this, the Stockholm sharply raked ice break about pierced the Doria's starboard side about 1/3 of her length from the bow under the ship's bridge and penetrated the hull into deeply and nearly 40 feet in the keel. So below the waterline, you got 5 fuel tanks on the starboard side that were actually torn open. And they filled with thousands of tons of seawater, so air was trapped in the 5 empty tanks on the port side, which caused them to float more readily, contributing to the severe lifts. And let's go back real quick. The Andrea Doria was actually designed with her hull divided into 11 watertight compartment doors, so any two would be okay. They'll be all right. However, the Stockholm, with the severe damage, had to refloat themselves. So after assessing the damage and the immediate danger, the Andrea Doria sent out an SOS call saying they need immediate assistance. Now, the rescue operations was by far a miracle. Since this is a busy shipping lane, it actually proved to be helpful for the Andrea Doria. So basically, the first one to respond was the United Fruit Company freighter, the Cape Ann, which was returned to the United States after a trip to Bremerhaven, Germany. And another one came in. This time, it's the U.S. Navy transport, the USNS Private William H. Thomas, who was actually en route to New York from Livorno, Italy, with 214 troops and dependents also responded to the signal and made immediate progress towards the site. So her captain, John Shea, was placed in charge of the rescue operations by the United States Navy and readily ordered his crew and prepare their 8 usable lifeboats. Joining them was the U.S. Navy destroyer escort, the USS Edward H. Allen. However, the French line's the Isle de France was eastbound from New York en route to her home port in Navarre with 940 and a crew of 826. This was the largest and fastest liner on the North Atlantic run, which basically gave the Andrea Doria some hope. So I think we're coming up to our next update on the build, so I'm going to go ahead and let my other counterpart take it away.
Alright, an update on building the Andrea Doria. I got the hull part, the black part done, and I'm going to work on the white superstructure. This is going to be the next thing that's going to take place. And right now I'm just watching the last few laps of the Martinsville Xfinity race, and I'm currently fixing up my light strip up above my head. So it's gonna be a lengthy. I'm not gonna feature the ending of the race because I don't want to spoil it for others. If you watched it, fine. But for those that have not watched it, yeah, I'm just not gonna spoil who won. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and take a break, get back right into this.
Finishing up the story, so I decided to have Shipwreck Sunday in the background playing this time around. So for the Andrea Doria, the evacuation went along great. Now, if you think about it, what would have happened if the ships were near Titanic at the time of her sinking? Almost everyone would have gotten off safely. That's what it is for the Andrea Doria's case. This was basically 44 years after the sinking of the Titanic. So, despite of the accident, which is basically a little amount of people that were actually killed within the impact zone, 1,663 passengers and crew has been rescued from the Andrea Doria, and the Stockholm, through the use of her own lifeboats and those from the stricken Andrea Doria, actually took on a total of 545 survivors, of whom 234 were crew members from the Andrea Doria who had left the vessel ahead of the passengers. 129 survivors were rescued by Cape Ann, 159 by the Private William H. Thomas, 77 by the Edward H. Allen, including Captain Kamale and his officers. One American sailor who actually slept through the entire collision and evacuation was rescued from the abandonment. Sinking liner by the tanker Robert E. Hopkins. The Island of France played the largest role, taking on 753 survivors. We need a Histobrick model of the Isle de France. So once the evacuation is complete, Captain Calamai of the Andrea Doria shifted his attention possibly towing the ship's shallow water, but unfortunately it was doomed. So all the survivors have been transferred onto various rescue ships bound for New York, and the crew began to disembark, forcing the abandonment of the ship. 6 a.m. even Captain Calamai was in a rescue boat, and the sinking began at 9:45, and by 10, the Andrea Doria's starboard side dipped into the ocean, and the 3 swimming pools were seen refilling with water. And as the bow slid, the stern actually rose slightly up out of the water, and the port propeller shaft became visible. As the port side slipped below the waves, some of the unused lifeboats snapped free from their davits, floated upside down. The Andrea Doria finally sank bow first 10 hours after the collision, and at 10:09 a.m. on the 26th of July, 1956, the ship had drifted 1.58 nautical miles from the point of collision. And there's even an aerial photograph of the stricken ocean liner capsizing and sinking that was taken, that actually won a Pulitzer Prize in 1957, and that was from Harry A. Trask of the Boston Traveler newspaper. And of course, I will provide a photograph in this video as well, so that way you guys be able to see it. So enough on that. Now, the build for this one is actually not that bad. It was actually pretty good. There was a little bit of repetitives in this one, and it wasn't really that hard. The bow was actually pretty good, well assembled. The stern was pretty much well assembled as well. And as I looked up right now, 51 lives were lost in the sinking, which basically 46 passengers from the Andrea Doria and 5 crew members of the Stockholm. Of the 46 passengers lost on the Andrea Doria, 43 died as a result of the collision. So basically no remains were ever recovered from the casualties, and they remain entombed with the wreck. And it's very sad. Now, don't contradict me. Don't put this out of context now. This was one of the most infamous rescues ever, but unfortunately, it is a unfortunate loss of life. So, don't shoot the messenger on this one. It's very sad, but unfortunately, something like this should not have happened, but unfortunately, things actually did happen. So, while the heavy fog was actually given the primary cause of the accident, it's actually not disputed that intermittent heavy fog are both frequent and challenging in conditions for mariners in that part of the ocean. So, there's a lot of factors. Andrea Doria did not follow radar procedures. Andrea Doria did not follow long establishment rules of vessels approaching head-to-head. Both turned towards starboard. So basically, Andrea Doria turned to port, closing the circle instead of opening it. The Captain Calamai of the Andrea Doria, deliberately speeding in heavy fog, cannot do that. But however, both ships were actually experiencing different weather conditions immediately prior to the collision. And you gotta remember, the collision occurred in an area of the North Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Nantucket, Massachusetts, where heavy and intermittent fog is very, very common. Andrea Doria's fuel tanks were half empty, not pumped with seawater ballast to stabilize the ship. A watertight door may have been missing between bulkheads near the engine room, which was thought it contributed to the Doria's problems, and also the Stockholm's navigating officer misread his radar thinking he was on a 15 nautical mile setting when in reality the radar was set for 5 nautical miles, so thus he thought he was farther from the Andrea Doria than he actually was. So basically he also failed to consult his captain as required by this basic regulation. Now, the Andrea Doria is actually lying in a very good condition though, but however, most of its superstructure, I think to this very day, has been fallen off. So basically, the ship is a frequent target for treasure hunters. It's actually known as the Mount Everest of scuba diving. The currents are so rough there that even the most experienced divers could die from it. If you think about it, if you dive down to the Britannic, if you suffer problems, you will die. Upon learning about this in 2016 to the wreck by Ocean Gate, and guess what? Who was CEO around that time? None other than Stockton Rush. Revealed that the Andrea Doria was decaying rapidly. He said when you look at the shape of the hull, it appears a lot has come off. One of the pieces are now actually broken off the wreck of the ship's bow. So, a lot of deaths actually did happen. The last one was back in 2017. His name was Steven Slater. He was pulled from the water unconscious, could not be revived. He was only 46 years old. And if you actually notice, the Andrea Doria model is just like how I did. Started it off, it's finishing up. Not a bad model, I would say. Actually pretty neat though.
Okay, so after nearly 2 hours, 3 to 2 hours on my part, the Andrea Doria is complete. This Italian liner right here is complete now. The quality of the build is actually pretty good now. There are a couple of gaps on here and everything, but I guess that's just wanted to try to size up the ship, and of course my back is a little bit arced up anyway, but hey, that's the cost of putting this thing together. So yeah, it really took a huge toll on me. So yeah, I don't know if you actually did notice from my laptop, I did kind of have Discord up, and then I had YouTube TV on, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to switch it over to Shipwreck Sunday and build the ship while I actually had that going. So Eleanor, if you're watching this great job on the Andrea Doria video. I actually got a lot more in-depth detail. Like, if you actually notice the deck detailing, if you notice these blue things on the ship, those are the swimming pools. I never knew that. Now, the downside is, well, I have one missing part, but luckily, I actually did happen to have it. So, all good there. No harm, no foul. So, you're good there. So, yeah, the Andrea Doria is a pretty good model. It was very unfortunate she ended the way that she is now. So, and one thing I learned about this ship is that if you're ever going to retrieve artifacts from the ship, please don't do it. It's a lot dangerous and it's a lot deadlier because of the currents. And I don't know if you actually do notice the mic picking up, but yeah, there's a concert outside, so not really my problem anyway, so not really my issue. So yeah, the Andrea Doria is done. Now, next build, I'm not certain of what I'm going to do next. So please keep an eye out for previews of what will it be, and make sure you stay subscribed to this channel anyway. So yeah, I'd like to thank you guys for watching this time-lapse video. Thank you for putting up with my voice. If you happen to like some of the videos that are back there that I had in the background, please do subscribe to those, especially to Shipwreck Sunday. And this one was Casual Navigation, which is basically what happened to the Andrea Doria, which we know it kind of capsized. So feel free to check them out. So anyway, once again, my name is Dustin, and I will see you guys in another Histobrick review.